Back to the Rebel Chum channel. Today we're going to do a quick comparison between two awesome brands, Vaders and Sabertrio. Now I'm not going to do a apples to apples comparison because that's simply not possible for a few reasons. That has to do with the cost and the technology that's in either lightsaber. So that's not really possible and it wouldn't be really fair. But I wanted to give my 50 cents on what I think about each lightsaber company, and in particular these two products individually, and why I like both companies so much. So we start off with the Vader's Mitsurugi 3K. Of course I did a review on that lightsaber already, but there's some really cool stuff about Vader's what I like so much about them. It's first and foremost their hilts are very thin and small. They're very close to an actual real-life sword dimension. So the handle of a sword, this is the closest thing you can get in the Saber community in terms of products that are in that dimension. So it's very slim, very comfortable, and just very true to an actual sword or katana hilt dimension. Secondly, they have these awesome packages where all their lightsabers from Vader's come with a crystal shard soundboard. Now that sounds maybe not as important for you now yet, but let me tell you, the soundboard is amazing. In this case, it's a crystal shard 4.0 soundboard, which has 6 sound banks. 6. It has RGB color mixing by default on the board embedded, so you have the option to color change colors if you have, for example, an RGB lightsaber, or you have a dedicated color. Let's say you didn't buy the upgrade from $99 US. In that case, you can color code or make different colors from the color that you have. Now you need to make sure that you picked a LED that is already color mixed. And then what I mean is, for example, I got light blue. Light blue is a mixture of a green LED and a blue LED. If you take purple, that's a mixture of a blue LED and a red LED. If you take mint green, that's a green LED and an amber LED. So you have 2 different LED colors that you can individually configure on the soundboard. If you have a dedicated red or dedicated regular blue or dedicated regular green, that means you have 2 of the same dyes, so 2 of the same color, so you cannot do the color mixing. The only color mixing you can do is change between the main color, which is, for example, 2 dyes of red, and then the secondary color, which is the flash on clash, which is most likely white. So you can have a red blade or a white blade or a light red blade if you mix the white with the red LED. So it's a little bit less options, but then again it's brighter than a color mixed color. So if you have 2 LEDs of red, it's brighter than 1 LED of red. So if you have an RGB or you have a purple and you want to do the color mixing, then if you configure that soundboard to have a red as a main blade, then it will run of 1 little LED dye versus 2 with a dedicated color. So it's not as bright, but then again you have different color options. So what I always do whenever I am on a budget, in this case with this Vader's Saber, I was on a budget, I didn't have enough money to buy the RGB upgrade. So what I did was, I'll show you guys. I put it in mute. So I color coded these colors. So this is a standard color as I bought it. This is a light blue. So it's a mixture of a green and a blue LED, and then white for flash and clash. Now I changed the settings on the board, so I actually now have mint green as well. So that's a dominance of green, and blue dye is like halfway through in terms of strength. So it gives you a different shade of blue, or more of like a green hint in there. And then we have another hint of blue. This one is more blue, dark blue and light green. And then we have an actual green. This is the single dye of green. So this is the green LED I talked about. And then we have the blue LED I talked about. So together make for that light green or the light blue color. So I can set these individual colors. And then we have white for the flash on clash, which is another dye, because the Tri-Cree LEDs used by both Vader's and Sabertrio exist of 3 dyes of 3 LEDs. and then we're back to that light blue color. So I have a little bit of a poor man's RGB, as I call it. So it gives me some variations and flexibility in changing color without having to break the bank and spend another $100 on the RGB upgrade, which is really nice by Vader's fault, but it was a little bit too much because I paid around $500 for this lightsaber. So I needed to make some concessions, and that's why I don't do an apple-to-apple comparison in this video, because this lightsaber is much more expensive than the one from Sabertrio, so it wouldn't be fair. Plus, the soundboard in here is a crystal shard version 4.0, which is only available for certain Saber companies like Vader's Vault, JQ Sabers, and I believe one other. Oh yeah, that's Rob Patakau, GSC Custom Sabers. I forgot his name, sorry. So there's only 3 or 4 vendors that are allowed to actually use that Plector Labs soundboard. So that wouldn't be a fair comparison, but it's a very responsive soundboard. It's on the same level as a Crystal Focus 9.0 soundboard, which is the highest board available and the most expensive board available within the Plector Labs soundboard range. A very nice saber, of course, always like Vader's Vault. They're known for high quality lightsabers, well produced, well finished, high quality all over, and you can see how much details in this lightsaber there are. It's just truly amazing. Now the other spectrum, it's not really the opposite of the spectrum, what I mean by any means, is and the other option available, I should say, is this really cool lightsaber from Sabertrio. Now this is really amazing because this is an all-in inclusive package like Vader's Vault. So I would always like to call it a full experience, a full lightsaber experience, where you get a saber with a soundboard, you get a closed as RGB or RGB setup, loudspeaker and whatnot, and this saber delivers it on every front. Now the difference with Sabertrio and Vader's Vault is that Vader's Vault has access to the Crystal Shard 4.0 soundboard, and Sabertrio does not. So in this case they keep the cost down by using a Pico Crumble soundboard, which is like an entry-level soundboard, but it also has RGB capabilities. So I can change colors on the fly, but it's a limited soundboard in terms of audio files, etc. they can play, so the swings, etc. are not as sensitive and not as diverse in different options for different sounds. Plus I cannot change a sound font. Sound font is burned into the soundboard chip, where with the Crystal Shard 4.0 from Vader's Vault I have 6 sound banks, so I can put on 6 different sound fonts and change to totally different sound font. With this one I can't do that, but then again this is more of a more budget friendly lightsaber, more affordable in terms of cost. Vader's Vault also have entry-level lightsabers that are in the same price class. They're not really entry-level, I should say. They're just in the same roughly around the same price range, with the same specifications of soundboard, etc. as I just mentioned. Just different type of hilt designs and different finish. Like mostly for around the same price, you pay from Vader's Vault you would have a plain unfinished hilt with no weathering, etc. It's just all silver. And this one is beautifully weathered. Now one thing I like about the saber is it has the dark side Pico Crumble. This is the version 1 soundboard, so it's a little bit older. The version 2 soundboard is out there, it's more sensitive and whatnot, has more sound effects and whatnot, but and more RGB color profiles. But for this video I just didn't have that around, so for now I just make the video as is. But for example, I have the blue color. It's a really beautiful color. Also a flash on class, same like the one from Vader's Vault. It's sporting an RGB LED as well, so it's the same type of technology for the LED. The difference is with the Sabertrio, you get it off the bat. So when you buy an FX ready lightsaber, in this case this lightsaber with the soundboard, you get the RGB included in that price. So for $250 you're completely done. You have an RGB lightsaber with 16 color fonts, color profiles. You have a Pico Crumble, which is a more basic soundboard, but then again you have your RGB. Whereas with Vader's Vault, if you want to have an RGB upgrade, you're looking at the start price probably roughly around $400 US versus a fully RGB ready saber from Sabertrio around $250 US. So there is some price difference, but then again, there's also bunch of trade-offs that you don't get on the Pico Crumble because it's a basic soundboard from Plector Labs. It's actually the lowest entry-level soundboard, but then again it has RGB, and if you're really into RGB, which for me is kind of important, especially with these kind of lightsabers, I like to change the color, blade color to whatever I want, then I can actually do so. So that's really cool. Both lightsabers from Vaders Vault and Sabertrio actually come with something very good, and they did something really good. And what I'm gonna show here is the Delrin chassis. So the Sabertrio, like Vaders Vault, has a Delrin chassis with a battery on there. And the difference between Vaders Vault and Sabertrio is that Sabertrio also has a rechargeable port on the Delrin chassis, so it makes it extra convenient to either charge it by a wall charger directly into the Delrin chassis, the battery, if it is empty, or you can pop out the battery and replace it the same like you can do with Vaders Vault. Vaders Vault sabers are much thinner and, as I just said, more of the dimension of an actual sword hilt. Where Sabertrio is MHS compatible, so it's a thicker hilt, but because it's thicker, it also has more space on the Delrin chassis for a bigger speaker. With this is a big 28mm bass speaker, so it's really loud, really bassy, and it has, because of that, it also has the space for a recharge port there. So that's really cool. Both Saber companies have excellent support. Customer support is really important within this community, and both companies absolutely deliver the best of the best customer service. I never experienced anything better than Vaders Vault and Sabertrio for these kind of full-end lightsabers. I have to say Electrum Saber's craft is also very good, but in this case we just limit ourselves to the comparison between these two companies. So yeah, there's some difference in dimensions, as I said. The combat class on Vaders Vault is a very thin type of lightsaber because it's more like real sword life dimensions, where the Sabertrio is more onto the MIS compatible threading system. So it's a beefier saber, but I actually always like beefy sabers. I like the beefier dimension of lightsabers. That is my personal preference. That's my personal preference. So I like that beefiness. Sometimes with certain Vaders Vault sabers I have owned, I felt like it was a little bit too thin, and then it felt like it's more like it sounds weird. It felt like a little bit like it was a little bit too thin for me. It was like a little bit. I was lacking a little bit too much of the gripping estate for me. I felt like, yeah, it's a little bit too thin. But a lot of people love that. So in this case, I love the dimensions of this hilt. This is so fantastic, this hilt. There's also a significant weight difference. The Vaders Vault lightsaber is a lot lighter than the one from Sabertrio. It's definitely heavier. But they're both beautiful sabers, and they both have their own niche fit. So they both fit for different solutions, but also the same stuff at the same time. So they're both made for heavy dueling. They're both made for spinning. High quality customer service, high-end build sabers, really good high-end sabers. I also would say the difference comes into in certain instances about price. For example, the one from Vaders Vault I showed you, the Mitsurugi 3K, is a lot more expensive, but then again there's a lot more details in the design and the hilt and the construction of it. So there's trade-offs, like yes, you pay more but you get a beautiful lightsaber. With this saber, for example, you pay $250 and you get a whole array of features with it. You get a thumb screw, you get a removable blade, a recharger, battery. Same with Vaders Vault, by the way. You get all that stuff as well. So in certain instances with certain hilts, the price between Vaders Vault and Sabertrio isn't significant big. The gap isn't that big. But then again, with the Sabertrio, the benefit is you get that RGB option. So like I'm gonna show you now really quick. So now I can just change any color I want, and that's all included in that default price. So let me choose one. So we'll take purple, and then I save the setting, and it's purple. So yeah, if you're really into a high quality lightsaber, good customer service, both Sabertrio and Vaders Vault are my recommended pick. If you want to have a fully RGB saber as well from that kind of quality company, then for example you have two options, both Vaders Vault and Sabertrio in this case. But for Sabertrio you don't have to pay anything extra because it's included in that $250 range. With Vaders Vault you have to pay around $100 more, but then again you get a much more luxurious soundboard with auxiliary button and 6 sound fonts, more sensitivity, color profile settings as well. Even if, as I explained earlier, if you don't choose an RGB saber, you're gonna have the performance RGB. So yeah, there's a lot of difference there. But if you want something out of the box, easy to manipulate, easy from the soundboard, change the color profiles and etc., and you have a certain budget, and it happens how to be up to $250, then the Sabertrio delivers something for that price range that is really astounding, because I'm still amazed by the quality and the fact that it has RGB for that price range. Now, if you want to go a little bit beyond that, then you get something truly amazing from Vaders Vault at the same time, because you can get that full experience from the Crystal Shard 4.0 soundboard, which would be the most close experience you can get to an actual Crystal Shard 9.0 soundboard, which is the highest end tier soundboard from Plector Labs, without having to fully break the bank. So both Saber companies have a really good array of lightsabers and options available. For me personally, I like both, so I can't do with one or another, because they definitely provide own unique things. They have very different options available, and cons and pros. For cons, I would say there are not as many cons to these both lightsaber companies. It's just personal preference. The cons are basically, do you want to have a more basic soundboard with RGB for a fixed price, or you want to have a higher end soundboard without RGB for roughly the same price. So it really comes down. To me, RGB is quite important, because if I'm gonna have one or two lightsabers only, then I want to have a fully immersive lightsaber with RGB, with a soundboard that detects swings, etc., and it's a decent soundboard. So there's something to say about that in those cases. But then again, there's plenty of times where I say, okay, I don't really need an RGB saber. I'd rather have a dedicated color versus an RGB color. So for example, in this case, I didn't really need RGB on the saber, so I just went for a dedicated color, and I just wanted to have this hill design because nobody else in the world on any saber company makes this like Vaders Vault does, and both Vaders Vault and Sabertrio are just fantastic saber companies, fantastic people working there, and they retain their value. So the resale value is still there. Plus, this was a limited edition saber, so I jumped on it, and I'm super happy with it. So in both cases, you can't go wrong with either Sabertrio or Vaders Vault. I might left out some things here and there, but hopefully in the chat you guys have a civil discussion about it. The bottom line for me is, it doesn't really matter what you pick in terms of Saber Tech or Saber Company from the two companies I just mentioned. Just look at what your budget is, which hill design it appeals most to you. Is it something that one company delivers in terms of aesthetic of a lightsaber that the other one doesn't deliver, or is it maybe the RGB? You just want to have the RGB and you're a little bit less on carrying the functionality of the soundboard itself, or you say, no, I'm more of a do-myself guy. I like to tinker around with the config files. I like the Crystal Shard version 4.4 more, or maybe it's another reason. Let me know in the comments. I'm really curious about it. So it cannot be an apples to apples comparison. It's not gonna happen. Both companies are fantastic. I like them, and hopefully this was a little bit useful to you. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next video. Bye bye.